I've had 3 GMs tell me this week that the Phillies' number one priority is outfield, and they really haven't been talking to teams about bullpen. Now, I won't be surprised if they had a bullpen arm. I won't be surprised if every contender has a bullpen arm. But they've been out there looking for an outfield help. So, I don't think they're getting the offensive production they were hoping for in center field. I don't think they're getting the offensive production they're getting overall. But that's what they've been looking for.
Former GM Jim Bowden on MLB Network Radio on Sirius XM. The Phillies making calls for outfield help. They might need extra calls now with Brandon Marsh potentially down for a bit. We'll talk to Bob Wankel right now from RedOctoberPhilly.com. Check out his newsletter on the Phils as they win 2 out of 3. They got Rhys Hoskins coming to town, a lot of Phils stuff. But it's always some of the things, when things are going good, you have something like this, Bob Wankel. Brandon Marsh potentially out here. It sounded like they were already calling for outfielders. They got to amp this up. Do they go in-house for the time being? What do you think happens with this latest injury?
Yeah, this is a tough injury for the Phillies. He was unavailable after the game last night, and I think the interpretation from a lot of the writers anyway was that he's probably pretty hurt. We think that there's I think anyway, I should say that there's a pretty good possibility that you may not see him until after the All-Star break. I mean, you're talking about if just put him on Trey Turner's timetable, right? Like they said last night, it's a strain. So if it is in fact a hamstring strain, that is a minor tear. That's medically what it is. They'll be conservative about bringing him back. One thing about hamstring injuries is, as we've learned with Trey Turner, is that when you think you're healed, you got to give it a couple extra weeks even beyond that because of the risk of re-injury. So, look, Phillies outfielders 25th in baseball in OPS this season with Brandon Marsh, hitting well against right-handed pitching. It's not been great out there, and now you're looking at potentially a prolonged absence. So, yeah, they're going to have to address this. They're going to have to address it, I believe, in-house to start and, go from there. I think David Dahl is probably the most obvious candidate to come up. He's not on the 40-man, but I think that there's, some flexibility there. Whether they put somebody on the 60-day IL or, just make a move off the 40-man and add him, I think that there's a shot that we see him at some point. Maybe it's not right away, but in the near future.
And he's a left-handed bat who's been an all-star. I mean, he's a guy who has some major league experience for those of you who are like, who the heck is David Dahl? They signed him in the offseason. Obviously didn't make the team out of spring training, but he's had a pretty good run down there at AAA.
Yeah, he was very impressive during spring training, so much so that even though the numbers never really made sense for him, you thought maybe they find a way to get him up here early. And then he's just continued it down at Lehigh. I mean, he's been really good. So I'm not saying he's going to be Brandon Marsh, but can he give you a functional look? Yeah, I think so. And then, listen, one of the things after last night's game, and I know people are going to love to hear this, but you watch Whit Merrifield right now. Just he was, again, just so bad last night. And it's like, what do you do to get Whit Merrifield going? What do you do? And Rob's answer after the game was he probably needs more consistent at-bats. And so now is there a world where Whit Merrifield plays a little bit more out in left field? Yeah, I guess so, and I don't think anybody's going to be real enthusiastic about that.
Well, I was going to say, Bob, though, isn't that the thing? Like, hey, guess what, Whit? You haven't done much, but you are now the guy almost every day out there. I mean, he's a right-handed bat. You're going to split time with him and Pache? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem, right? Like, they don't really have a left-handed look for them out there in the outfield right now. It's Merrifield, it's Pache, it's Rojas, it's Castellanos. It's 4 guys that all hit from the right side and haven't been terribly productive. So
none of which have any power other than Castellanos either.
Yeah, and then you look and you say, all right, well, maybe Cody Clemens can go run around and play left field. I would say that they might entertain that, but are they overly enthusiastic about putting him in left field? Probably not. So this is a situation where when Turner went down, you thought to yourself, okay, we're going to play Merrifield at second base, slide over Stott. That'll probably be how we address this. It didn't work out that way because Edmundo Sosa went nuts, and that was a great problem to have. And that they had answers for that. With this injury, there's not a great answer for it other than you better hope you see a lot of left-handed pitching. Because if not, right now it's kind of unclear what this is going to look like.
Yeah. Bob Wankel, redoctoberphilly.com. More on the news in the newsletter on this whole situation. Brandon Marks exited the game last night. Will be evaluated, but it would imagine, as you said, it's going to be because the initial diagnosis is worse than Turner's, correct?
Yeah, so with Trey Turner's, it was soreness, and we said, "Oh, okay," and then we found out what that was. Like last night, the Phillies were a little bit more direct. I mean, look, maybe they're not as focused on this as maybe someone like I am, but Anthony Sanfilippo and I were both covering the game last night for Crossing Broad, and we're like looking at each other, and we're like, "Oh, they used the word strain," so we know that there's something here. Now, look, I'm not reporting this, to be very clear, but I am just saying if you kind of put two and two together, the likelihood is that he's going to miss an extended period of time here.
Yeah,
it would be very unlikely that they come out in the next hour here, which they will, with an update that says, he's day to day. We'll see him in London.
Did Rob Thompson indicate over the weekend that Sosa could play some outfield when Turner comes back?
It's possible. So they did experiment with this a little bit at spring training last season. It was, hey, we like what he's doing. Let's see if we can maybe make him a little bit more versatile. You were obviously dealing with Bryce Harper not being available at the start of the season. So they were looking for some different solutions there. Like, could Edmundo Sosa, is he athletic enough and defensively capable enough to go out and play left field a little bit? Yes, I would say so. But again, that's not an ideal solution because you're talking about a right-handed hitter. And I do think that you run the risk of overexposure with Edmundo Sosa. Like, we went through this with him last year. He got off to a really good start in April and then sort of fell off a little bit. He was outstanding in May. I mean, of any player with 80 plate appearances or more during the month of May in Major League Baseball, he had the highest slugging percentage. I mean, never in a million years could you expect that. But that doesn't mean that he's going to do it again in June. So I think you have to be careful there.
In that bite that we played before you came on, Bob, that Bowden indicated, they're not happy with their center field offensive production, which isn't crazy. But he mentioned the outfield as a whole. But do you think they were thinking about center field, about maybe doing something different there? Or has he come on enough? Where do you think that kind of stands as we hit June?
I don't think that the Phillies can be so selective to dial in on a specific position. I think that they know that the outfield is a weakness. I think they know they have to address it in some capacity. And I think that they will remain open to exploring different avenues, which means different player types. Is it somebody that's more – it's going to have to be an offensive player. There's no need to try to upgrade yourself defensively. They're good there. So – but is it somebody that is a little bit more versatile that can play center field, or are they going to have to kind of settle for a corner outfielder anchor type? And I think that when you look across the sport, there are so many mediocre teams, but what that does is it opens the door for teams to say, we're in it. We're not going to sell. So I don't know what type of market we're going to see materialize here 7 weeks from now, 8 weeks from now. It's teams like the Washington Nationals are within striking distance of a playoff spot right now. As bad as the Mets have been, they're one good week away from still being in the mix. So what is this going to look like? Is there a world where Kyle Schwarber runs around and plays a little bit more left field and opens the door for another possibility? I would say that's unlikely. I don't think the Phillies want to do that, but sometimes the situation dictates that you do something you don't necessarily plan to or want to do.
Yeah.
So we'll see. And I agree with Bowden's assessment that if they have to make one move, it's going to be for an outfielder.
I didn't even think of the Schwarber. That's how much he doesn't, out of sight, out of mind, I guess, on the outfield there. I mean, I didn't even actually think of him as a possible, hey, Wednesday night, get out there and hack it up for a game or so. Bob Wankel, redoctoberphilly.com. The other obvious, we talk about Castellanos on the offensive side so much, and it's like, hey, look, he's struggling, but it gets magnified because he's the only guy struggling. Is Taijuan Walker the pitcher, that guy, or is this a legitimate issue? I mean, in other words, hey, he's the fifth guy. He's giving you 5 innings in June. They're okay with that. I mean, I think the writing's on the wall. He ain't pitching a playoff game. Are they just happy if he gets 5 innings in June that they don't have to ask somebody else to pitch?
I think that privately do they expect, like the key decision makers, do they expect Taijuan Walker to continue if everyone stays healthy? Do they continue to expect him to hold off Spencer Turnbull in the second half of the year? Probably not. Taijuan Walker has been very unimpressive. And it's not just, hey, look at his ERA. It's look at the contact profile, the average exit velocity, the hard hit percentage, the expected metrics. If you look at like baseball and Savant, StatCast, I mean, it's all bad. He's giving up so much hard contact. It's like bottom 5 percentile of all MLB pitchers. So it's not like he's running into bad luck here. He's throwing 88 to 92, often elevated, very hittable. Teams are just doing damage off of him. And I don't think that there's a world, like I can talk myself into Nick Castellanos catching fire for 3 weeks and really kind of helping in the middle of that order. I think that that's possible. Taijuan Walker, like, I don't know what the upside is. Like, yes, if you go back to his start against the Marlins a couple of weeks ago, he goes 6 innings, he gives up 1 earned run. Thought he was actually hit pretty hard in that start, but he survived it. Can he give you that start occasionally? Like, yeah, I think that there's a world where he could give you a 6-7 inning start, 2 earned runs here and there. But I think what you saw last night is more or less what he is at this point.
Well, I'll just throw this in to get your opinion on it, Bob. He was Cy Young-esque in June last year. I mean, he was awesome in June. Did the Phillies say, look, can he just get us through June, 5 innings at a time, and then I guess try to explain to the people, too. Like, Turnbull is a guy who's pitched really well, and I think there's a fine line here. He's thrown 44 innings. Last year, he threw 50. The year before that, he didn't pitch at all. And the year before that, he threw 56. This guy only thrown 106 innings in 2 seasons. So they're trying to probably straddle the line of his usage at the same time saying, we're paying a guy $18 million. Can you get us 5 innings a night for 1 more month?
I think that that's exactly it. Every time you watch him pitch, you think, like, is that it? Is that going to be the last time we see? Are we still doing this? The reason why it's such a hot button issue is because Spencer Turnbull performed so well. If Spencer Turnbull wasn't a factor here, or he was what we all thought he was going to be, which is like just a guy as a depth piece, I don't think we would all be going crazy about Taijuan Walker. We'd say he's a 5th starter. They're 41-19. This isn't that big of a deal. But when you have a guy who's performed so well, just kind of sitting there, and he contributed big time on Saturday night, but prior to that, he wasn't really a difference maker.
That's the fine line, though, Bob. How do you keep him as sharp as he was by using them the way that you're using them, and then say, hey, flip the switch in August. We want you to start every 5th day. Yeah,
I mean, you have a guy that's in the middle of an all-time heater, and you put him on ice, basically. And do you know that he's just going to return to that form? I don't. I think that's quite a gamble. But
right, this is a guy who, by the way, was 3-17 in his last full season. It's not like this guy has Cy Young credentials.
Yeah. It's you don't have Garrett Cole sitting there, right? But at the same time, I think you really nailed it. You're paying him what you're paying him. He can get you the 5-6 innings. They probably are cognizant of the workload. And you get to July, though, and if things continue as they have here recently, at some point they're going to hand this job back to Spencer Turnbull. Like, Taijuan Walker's not going to finish the season in the rotation with a 6.5 ERA. It won't happen.
Yeah, I think all of that is, like, the interesting part here to me is it's obvious Walker is what he is. Get us 5 innings so we don't have to use somebody else here. We're paying the $18 million. Can you do that? I think he gets to maybe the All-Star break, maybe see if he turns things around. But I would even be surprised this time around if he's even on the postseason roster. He didn't throw 1 pitch last year, but he was on the roster.
I just don't think, barring injury, how it happens. You're going to go 4 starters deep when you get to the later rounds. Those 4 guys between Nola, Wheeler, Suarez, and Sanchez have just been phenomenal. He doesn't have the stuff that plays in the bullpen. It's not like you can turn him into a reliever and all of a sudden he's going to find an extra 3 to 4 miles an hour in velocity.
Yeah. I mean, I throw harder than Walker. At my height, I throw harder than Walker.
I saw, did you have Mike McGarry on today at 2:30?
Yeah.
Yeah, he said that he saw some kids playing in the Cape this year that were throwing harder than Taijuan Walker last night. I don't want to put Mike's business out there or anything, but it was a good line. I thought I'd share it.
Yeah, he was hitting 88 last night. I mean, That's rough at that level. I mean, and by the way, though, one of the interesting, we talk about velo, the Phillies starters as a staff have like the lowest velo as a staff in baseball. So it does kind of show you about their pitching. But you did a thing over at Red October Philly about just how good these three pitchers have been. And you could throw some shackles on any of them and possibly win a little Cy Young money.
It's interesting. So obviously we've talked so much about Zach Wheeler. He's the pedigree. He's kind of come in as the favorite. Spencer Strider goes down, and it's like it's Zach Wheeler's award to lose. And certainly Ranger Suarez has been so good that he's worked his way into the conversation, and he's on the short list. ESPN.com does this Cy Young predictor, and they use this mathematical formula. It's, to me, a little bit outdated. It counts a little bit for wins and losses, which is not a metric that I would really rely on, but certainly innings pitched, strikeouts, earned runs. And in this predictor right now, as we talk, number 1 is Ranger Suarez, clear leader. Number 2 is Aaron Nola. And number 3 is Zach Wheeler. So it's 3 Phillies at the top. And it kind of accentuates how good Nola's been. And it's interesting. Like, here's a guy that we talked about Aaron Nola after every single start for years, Mike. It would be like, well, what is he? Is he an ace? Is he a number 3? What's wrong with this guy? Should they re-sign him? I mean, every time he took the ball, a conversation would ensue. And now here he is this year. He signs a mega deal. There should be a ton of pressure on him to cash in and do it. He's performed the way that you would hope, and nobody's talking about it. So it's kind of crazy. But it just is a different way of pointing out how good this rotation's been. And while Christopher Sanchez is not in that conversation, I mean, how damn good has he been? So these 4 guys right now are just incredible.
Well, I will say in regards to Sanchez, to put in perspective, Walker, Sanchez and Turnbull, by the way, average start get 1 more out than Walker does. Now, you might say, how effective are those? But they're only getting 1 more out than Walker averages like 5 1/3, and those guys are at 5 2/3. So they're more effective, no question asked.
I would argue, though, that the whole thing about Taijuan Walker is that he's supposed to go take down the 6th and the 7th, and like that's the value in him. 7 innings, 3 runs, 7 innings, 4 runs. When it's 5 innings, 4 runs, it's like, man, if you're not giving us that length, then what are you doing? And that's the problem.
Yeah. Oh, no, listen, if Walker, I said he's Jake Cave to me. If I never saw him again, I'm quite okay. I'm quite okay with never seeing Tyler. But I will say, Bob, of all the moves, this is one horrendous move by Dave Dombrowski, who's made a lot of good moves, but that one was a horrendous decision.
I mean, Mike, he was 21. The Phillies were 21-10 in his 31 starts last year, and they're 4-3 in his 7 starts this year. What's that? 25-13. He's winning almost 2/3 of his games. That's a great signing. No, I'm just kidding. Of course, I think they'd like to have that one back, Mike. There's no question.
No question. Yeah, and he's 2 more years.
2 more years after this one.
Wow, unbelievable.
2 years, $36 million total with them.
Yeah. Bob Wankel, you covered Rhys Hoskins during your illustrious Crossing Broad beat writing career. I would think that the conversation of that he would there was a potential of him getting booed is preposterous. He's gonna get, to me, somewhere near the Chase Utley treatment almost. Not quite maybe, but an elongated standing O tonight. Like, he was kind of the bridge from those awful years to what we have now.
Yeah, I don't think he actually thinks he's going to get booed. I think that he's just taking that modest route to this conversation. I don't think he wants to put the expectation out there and say, like, well, I think I'm going to get a heck of a welcome.
Right, exactly.
So I understand it, but somehow it's spawned into this, are Philly fans going to boo Rhys Hoskins tonight? Everyone loves this guy. Even if you didn't love his defense or he was streaky or what have you, I mean, he was a really important player that was a part of them turning around the fortunes of the franchise. And he's a great guy who's done a lot for the community. And he's had some big moments here. This is a no-brainer. And I don't mean this, I'll be careful how I say this, but yeah, I agree. He's going to get, he's not Chase Utley, but he's going to get the Chase Utley treatment tonight. It's going to be a heck of an ovation, and he deserves it.
No doubt. Listen, I was very tough on Haas. His defense was horrible at times, just downright bad. But I mean, just the guy that he was. Now you probably been around him a lot. I mean, he just was a very well respected guy. And him being around last year, it's a shame that he never got the chance to kind of get that send off. I think that adds to what tonight will be. And as we've talked a lot, Bob, I mean, for God's sakes, they're getting 40,000 people there a night. It's going to be nuts.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, look, their attendance has been phenomenal. The weather was good this weekend. It's going to be pretty good again this week. He didn't get that proper send-off. Like they did a great job at the end of last season, the postseason, putting him out there, and he got his moment. But now to be back in uniform and actually on the field and playing again, they're going to let him have it in a good way. It's going to be a cool moment. It should be fun to watch.
Bob, I will not talk. I'll be in London. I'm going to the game.
Very good.
Yes.
Very good. You're going to get to see Taijuan Walker pitch in London. So that's exciting for you.
So I hear. I don't know if I'm going to the game Saturday or Sunday yet, but when I saw Walker was they're not going to change this?
We'll see.
I mean, they got a bunch of days off here coming up. You can't bump him?
Look, man, there's a lot of pubs over there. Just go pregame, and you won't even know who's pitching. It'll be all right.
It's a 10 o'clock in the morning start, so most people will maybe be hungover and they won't see the Taijuan Walker start. But just like I was on Sunday after my Union game. Bob Wankel, I can't believe of all the people. I can't believe of all the people I forgot, which was like 2.
I want a public apology. I want a commercial and an apology thanking me for my contributions to this program.
I said at the start today, 15 years. I try to remember all the people, and the guy. I said, how of all the people that I forgot, there was only like 2 or 3 people that I legitimately was like, wow, I can't believe I forgot that guy. That's unbelievable. But I thank you for being a major part of this show. People tell me all the time how much they just love listening to us talk Phillies. It just sounds like we're in a pub in London.
There you go. I love doing it. So hopefully we got another 15 in us too.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. Although if I'm here 15 years from now, I've been a big failure.
All right. Well, I don't have anything to add to that. But
all right, man. Good to see you.
Let's see it.
Bob Wankel, RedOctoberPhilly.com. Check out the newsletter. Make sure you subscribe, and all his work over at Crossing Broad. You can check that out there.